If you've experienced the cycle of toxic relationships and you're sick and tired of feeling stuck, sad, and lonely, now is the time to heal and create your best life. In this podcast, you'll hear world-class toxic relationship recovery expert Stephanie McPhail sharing the support, guidance, and tools you need so you can be truly happy whether you're single or in a relationship. She is the real deal. I should know, she's my wife. Here's your host, Stephanie.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Toxic Love Transformation. I'm your host, Stephanie McPhail, and this is my husband, David Charon.
Hey, everybody.
Today we're going to talk about how to get unstuck fast, especially after ending a toxic relationship, especially after a divorce.
Absolutely. And just for a little context to tee it up, the reality is whether you're fresh out of a bad relationship or maybe you've been divorced for months or longer, if you're feeling stuck and you're not able to heal your pain and find that happy version of you, you got to take action to move in a new direction. That's what this is all about. So if feeling stuck resonates with you, healing and getting unstuck is absolutely possible for you. Now, granted, we understand healing is a process that takes time, but you can dramatically speed up the process with the right approach. So tonight we're going to kind of take a look at some different approaches in case maybe what you've tried so far hasn't quite gotten you the results that you want. Now, we believe in a simple is best approach, and our general framework to get unstuck fast is to get the right guidance, support, and tools. All right, so let's take a look at the first pillar of that, guidance, because when you don't know what you don't know, right? So knowledge is power, and of course, by that logic, lack of knowledge is a lack of power. So we want to touch on a few things to sort of get the knowledge that you need to understand how to live your best life and have healthy relationships.
All right, so the first thing that I'm going to bring up is talking about trying to figure it out on our own. There's that feeling of, and I was just having a conversation with a few of our clients today of, feeling like they can figure it out by themselves. They just have to do X, Y, Z. They have to do a few things, or they're like, I think I already know. But the problem is when we try to figure it out by ourselves, we're missing some of the key points that we literally can't see because we're coming from our own perspective. So when you don't have that outside support or that outside view, you're going to make mistakes that's going to take you longer to figure out. So you might finally figure out, but it's going to take a really long time. There's going to be a lot of falling down trying to figure it out.
Yeah, there's no merit badge for unnecessary struggle, and you don't have to reinvent the wheel, right? All you really need to do to start with is begin to model people who've been where you're at and who are where you want to be. Gaining that knowledge and insight is going to be tremendously valuable. And for a lot of people, especially when they're finding themselves in the rubble of the aftermath of a breakup, they're in that sort of education phase. We're like, I need to understand what was it that I missed? What are the red flags? What does a healthy relationship actually look like? Mm-hmm. And of course, for those who are inclined to pursue knowledge and increase their power in that regard, books on personal development, self-help, overcoming toxic relationships, and those sorts of resources are very positive.
And they're a good starting point. I mean, obviously, I've written 2 books, so I definitely 100% agree that books is a good starting point. But the problem with books is that it doesn't give you specific direction. So, everyone, I always say there's a lot of similarities. It's almost like these toxic people have read the same book themselves of how to treat us badly and us sticking around. But there's still some very specific things that are for each one of us to work on. So having that outside perspective of showing us where we're making those mistakes, not just reading a book about it, is going to help us move a lot more quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of good information out there, but sometimes you can feel sort of overwhelmed, overloaded by it. By that logic, you can also pursue watching videos, going to summits. Of course, Stephanie's been featured on countless summits. Some of you watching might have come into our world from having seen us on a summit. And that's really great too. Again, you get a chance to get yourself out there into the world of the experts. Now, of course, discernment is key, right? Because there are a lot of people out there claiming to know what they're talking about, and they're speaking from a place without, any direct personal experience.
Well, and so, I always say there's that educational phase. So, maybe you started that educational phase while you were still in the relationship. And you're like, okay, I researched it. They're a narcissist. They're a sociopath. They're a borderline personality disorder, whatever the things are that we've researched. And so we go to these summits, we get sucked in, we read these books, and all of that is really great information. But information alone doesn't cause change. And I actually just did a TikTok on this the other day, is when we get so sucked into researching what was wrong with the other person and becoming experts on narcissism and all those things, we're literally taking away our power and our energy from focusing it on ourselves.
Well, why do you want to become an expert at something you don't want? And we understand, a lot of people with that approach are coming from the place of fight or flight where they feel like they need to be prepared, hypervigilant. It's good to know about narcissism, focus on all this bad behavior so I can spot it next time.
Well, and it's also like, I think, for me, when I read my first book about codependency, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not the only one. Other people have been through. In fact, it's been a lot of people that have been through this. There was something that felt good about it because when you are in a narcissistic relationship, you start to literally feel crazy because you question everything.
Yeah,
so for that part, it totally does make sense. But again, the longer we stay in that education phase and stay out of the self-reflection and accountability phase, the longer it's going to take us to get the results we're looking for.
Yeah, again, having knowledge about these things, certainly working knowledge is important. And it does feel good to be validated, right? It sort of, lowers that shock value of like, oh my gosh, what the heck just happened to me? I must be the only one.
Yeah.
But again, knowing is only half the battle, right? So some of you, a lot of you, we as well, in years past, had sought help from a therapist. That's a pretty much like the go-to mainstream suggestion. Your friends, family members, coworkers.
Well, and it's included with our insurance. Not everybody, but a lot of us.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, therapy, the opportunity to sit down with someone who's creating a space for you to start unpacking your baggage and examining what has been working can be very helpful. Anything that you would add from your experience?
I loved my therapist. She was great. And she was a really good catalyst for helping me see the areas that I was continually finding myself in bad situations. Like she was able to point out, like, you do have codependency, you can have boundaries. So all these things that I didn't know, it was great to have someone from the other side kind of shining a light on the areas of some of the childhood trauma and the other things that were coming up for me that I didn't know were there. So in that sense, for me, therapy was a great starting point to help me grow.
And I want to just add something to that, which I think is important to be careful of. And not to say this is necessarily the therapist's intent, but I find a lot of times when you're diagnosed as codependent or borderline personality disorder, whatever the case is, some people effectively die by the diagnosis. They identify with the label, and that really creates a box that sometimes it's really hard to get out of. Again, it can feel validating to feel like, okay, this is a real thing. They describe what I'm experiencing. I can kind of talk about this and identify some of these patterns. But when you identify with some problem or label or diagnosis, it can kind of be a touchy situation. Now, I don't know about, any of you watching. I know, again, therapy works for some people. I was in and out of therapy for years, more than half a lifetime ago. And while, it was a good place to talk, with someone who I figured was a safe person to talk to. They were getting paid for it, right? So they kind of had to, even when I got some clarity, just from talking about stuff, I didn't really have the tools to change. I didn't really understand the nuance of my situation. And, it got to a point where, my father came down and said, you guys just bullshit for an hour and smoke cigarettes in his office. When it came down to that, I said, you know what, I'm done. I quit it, and it really just didn't get me the results I want. And unfortunately, a lot of people feel that way too. A lot of therapists are sort of just regurgitating textbut knowledge.
Well, they're not trained in specifically healing from toxic relationships. Right. And it's not necessarily, and they also, in the defense of therapists, they have been trained not to give very specific goals and supports. So they're not supposed to tell us what to do. Now, the reason why they do that is because they want us to take responsibility for ourselves. But the problem that comes up with that is we don't know what to do. If we knew what to do, we would be doing it. So we can figure out all day long why we got to this point in our lives. But in order to create something different, we need the right tools to be able to do that. And, some therapists are really great with giving tools, but I hear over and over again from clients when they come to us, they don't have those tools from those therapists. And it's kind of like they've been in therapy for 25 years, which you shouldn't need to be in therapy for 25 years. There should be an ending point at some point.
Right. They kind of,
or stop repeating the same thing. Like if you're in therapy for 25 years, you keep doing the same thing, probably not working for you.
Yeah, you might want to seek another therapist or maybe get your medication adjusted. But
Or it's not just a different therapist, but even if you've had 10 different therapists, if none of them are giving you the right types of supports, it's not really helping you get to where you want to go.
yeah, and again, that's why we took a different path in our, in our career, really, because I had studied psychology in college. Stephanie has a degree in psychology, but we turned to coaching and mentorship because it's a more nuanced approach. It's a way to accelerate your progress. And again, when we started this call, we're talking about getting unstuck fast. Okay. If being in therapy for weeks, months, or years on end works for you, more power to you, but that's not what we're talking about here. So, when it comes to working with a coach or a mentor, again, I've said this before, every successful person in any area of life who you admire has a coach to help them shortcut, to tap into their brain bank and their wisdom and experience to make, shifts quicker, and also to help keep them accountable. The way I look at it is you can read the books you go to the relationship section at the bookstore, you can get a therapist, you can watch every one of 24 videos in a given summit. Some of you watching found us after you'd read, watched the first 12.5. But, those methods, I kind of look at it like, in terms of shining a light on what you need, they're like a lantern on a horse and buggy. What we found is having a mentor who's actually been where you're at and who has navigated through and found the key pieces to, move past that light. That's like having like halogen high beam headlights on a high performance automobile. Okay. And again, we're talking about clarity and speed if we want to get unstuck. So that can be really powerful as well. And it's something that a lot more people, I think, are recognizing the power of.
Yeah, agreed. And so the next part is the support. Who do you surround yourself with? So, codependency comes along with the 12-step codependency programs. And again, another really great starting point. We have clients that start there. And again, they get to know themselves better. They get a sponsor. They have other people they can commiserate with.
That validation.
Yeah. So again, it's a really great place to get that validation and see where we're making those mistakes. For some people, that's all they need. They just need that understanding that they're not alone. So that for that is really wonderful.
Yeah. And the 12-step programs, AA, for example, has proven to be a really powerful resource for people going through this stuff. Again, you're in a group of people who are going through the same sort of things. But for a lot of people, like you said, they start there and they find that while it's validating, while it's comforting to a degree to have people who are going through the same thing, when that's your focus, it can become troublesome. And again, a lot of that framework of the 12-step programs has you ask really powerful questions, but for some people, it's not enough.
Yeah, I mean, in 12, it really is an amazing program, but you also have to think too, is that your sponsor they have to only be a certain amount of years ahead of you. So they're not professionals, they're regular people, just like everybody else, which is great in some ways. But they're also doing their regular jobs and doing other things. So you also can only get as far as where that person is. So you have to be aware of that also.
Yeah, that's true. And again, not to take away from it all, it's a really important part of the overall support framework in terms of resources that the average person would have available to them. Okay. It's not an expensive thing.
Yeah.
It's not a large investment. It is an investment of time. And again, at the end of the day, you may have tried that and found that while you made some good connections, you got that sense of, relevance and validation. It may be years that you spend in that, and you could get, again, really good at overcoming the problem, even being a support to other people in the group, but your life may not necessarily reflect that, right? Same sort of thing with counselors in a sense, right? You can get a lot of that support and, even sometimes strategies, but, the feedback that I've gotten from people I've spoken with is it's more like, just a place to sort of unload, and you're getting the perspective of someone who may not have necessarily been through it.
Yeah, and it's interesting. One of my clients today has a regular therapist that she's been seeing, and she reached out to me to get some information, and I was able to shine a light in a different way. There was definitely some overlap, but I gave her some very specific directions, and she had been stuck for a little while. But with those directions, she was ready and ready to go, which is great. And that's where we want you to go.
Yeah. Now, again, counselors and therapists, they can work for some people. One thing I want to point out is that this is really only going to work if you allow yourself to be vulnerable And certainly for me, and I think for a lot of other people, in order to, broach that and be able to let your guard down, you need to find a therapist that you or counselor that you really vibe with.
Hmm.
And this is sure sort of a, an ambiguous kind of, vibe thing, but it really is important. And, I would recommend that if you're going to seek out help, find someone to give you that guidance and support that you really vibe with. I know a lot of people have had to switch therapists countless times because they feel like they just don't get it.
Yeah, yeah. Which brings, kind of into this next thing of just talking about, other support groups, whether they're online support groups, church support groups. We have a lot of people that come to us after divorce care and things like that. Those are again good places for that, just other people understanding what you're going through. Keep in mind though, the big thing with that is, are you looking to have other people to commiserate with your problems, or are you looking for people that are also looking to improve their lives?
Absolutely, absolutely. And that brings us to one of the most powerful methods of support, which I think up until relatively recently was somewhat unconventional. With the advent of COVID and people kind of staying inside, it really started to take off. And that's really having a safe and supportive private community. Specifically, what I'm talking about is online, because again, you can sometimes find local meetup groups, church groups, and stuff like that. But it's sort of more a general population,
Mm.
right? And again, you're not necessarily getting to rub elbows with people who are as committed as you are to healing and making real positive change. Facebook groups has been a great resource for a lot of people.
Mhm.
We're the creators and admins of a nearly 15,000 member Facebook group, one of the most active and engaged groups for healing after toxic relationships. And even beyond that, what we lovingly call our inner circle is a place where it's like-minded women who are committed to their own healing and growth. They get it. They understand. They've been through a lot of the same things you've gone through.
Mhm.
They can be there to offer you additional support when you need a shoulder to cry on, encourage you when things are difficult, share their own insights that you can really resonate with, and of course, celebrate you when you win as well.
And when we work with men, you still have that community of even just having David and I. We do things a little bit differently with men. We give them kind of their own treatments, but being able to have that kind of support again with people who have been there, that all they have is your best interest to help you to heal, and everyone is on a similar journey. So everybody understands where you've come from, and they are all actively looking to improve themselves. That is going to be a major game changer, because we can go commiserate with our friends, talk about how crappy, men or women are or whatever, but that doesn't actually have us change. What has us change is actively making the shifts, actively taking the steps, and surrounding ourselves with people that are also elevating themselves, because it helps. Just watching other people succeed helps inspire us as well.
And not only that, it's not just about the education and the support, it's about the camaraderie.
Yeah, well, that's true.
Our approach is holistic. So it's not just about getting the information, healing yourself mentally and emotionally, but socially as well. And one of the things that I love so much about our inner circle clients group is that it's like a fireside chat kind of vibe to it.
Mhm.
You can come as you are. I tell people, show up in your bunny slippers with a cup of tea.
Mm.
And sometimes they do. We got cats walking across the desk and all that stuff.
Mhm.
So, having a place where you feel at home, where you feel loved and appreciated unconditionally, where you can be yourself, flaws and all, show up and have a safe and comfortable space to get uncomfortable.
And see, probably for a lot of people, the first time being safe and really bearing their souls to people that are healthy, that aren't going to hurt them. Because how often did we try to be authentically ourselves to people that were there not to have our best interest in mind?
Exactly. When you're in the right private supportive community, your fellow members don't have an agenda. They don't have anything to prove. They don't gain anything by getting you to believe a certain way. It's really about giving you the space to find your own best path forward with that level of support.
So when it comes to tools, my favorite phrase that I love to hate is when someone says, you've been through a divorce, you should start dating again, download the apps and put yourself back out there.
Hey, it works for some, I guess.
Yes, but not more so than not. What we find is that when people get right onto those dating apps before they do the work to heal themselves, they end up just repeating the same types of behaviors, the same types of toxic people in their lives,
Yeah.
until you really discover, and you need that time alone. And most of us think that and again, had this conversation again today several times, but we end this toxic relationship and we're like, I'm free, cool, I don't have to ever worry about it again. But instead, this really weird thing happens. And that's when all of the big emotions that we thought we had worked through, now all of a sudden they start coming out, because now we don't have to focus on that other person anymore. Now it's totally on us. So if we try to fill in those negative feelings with starting to date again already, then we're not going to actually do the work on ourselves to get to that next place, to find the right type of partner for ourselves.
Yeah, it's kind of like you don't go to the shopping at the grocery store when you're hungry. You end up coming home with junk food. Okay, so maybe this list was sort of like least to most favorable. I don't know. So I mean, as far as the dating apps, when you are ready, it's a way to sort of window shop. And
well, educational dating is
educational dating. And of course, my mother said, "Oh, you find crazy people on the internet, and some other crazy people everywhere." Again, make sure that you've done the work first before you do that. But having a dating app and taking a chance that there are going to be maybe a lot of scam artists on there, but there are genuine people. You'll get to browse them from afar and get a sense maybe of their interest, compatibility, hot or not, whatever you like, before you actually enter into that situation. Now, again, we're talking about tips to get unstuck and break through, and particularly important after you're out of a toxic relationship or following a high conflict divorce, is to, if you have not been attending to your physical fitness with an exercise routine, this is a really powerful thing. It sounds simple, and it is. There's a brilliant nugget of wisdom that says, like, if you don't know where to start, move your body. Move your body. This is something you can do. And again, what we're talking about really in terms of getting fast results is taking small steps. It doesn't require an overhaul. Okay. And a lot of times we get stuck because we're looking at the whole staircase instead of the first step. Right. But moving your body, getting the blood flowing, 30 minutes of steady state cardio, lifting weights, a form of exercise that is fun for you. Might not be easy at first, but something that you can develop into a habit, because you're going to not only be helping your body be more resilient. The body mind is just two expressions of us. It can obviously improve your brain chemistry, improve your mood, boost a lot of those positive chemicals. So I love it. It's sort of my own natural antidepressant. If I'm feeling stressed or anxious, I go bang out some sets at the gym, get on the stationary bike, whatever have you, and that can really be a positive.
Yeah, and that's part of what we have all of our clients doing. We're very holistic. We come from a holistic perspective. So, I've always got my green smoothie that I'm sipping on as I'm taking clients. I'm drinking my 96 ounces of water. I'm making sure that I practice what I preach. I am exercising. I actually exercise 5 times a week. Make sure I get the cardio and the weightlifting. All of that actually increases our endorphins and makes us feel better as we're dealing with all the stress that we have, so that we come at it from a better perspective.
Absolutely. Now, when it comes to breaking free, a lot of times the big, thorn in our side is a sense of chronic stress and anxiety. We're, catastrophizing, worrying about what else is going to go wrong throughout this, difficult divorce process. We're trapped between nostalgia for what used to be so good, ruminating on all the things that went bad, remembering those traumatic events. So turning down the volume on these emotions, these unpleasant, negative, stressful emotions, is really important. And I know you're a big fan of yoga and meditation.
Yes.
To do that.
Yeah. So especially when we've been through trauma, and I recommend this all the time, is we disconnect from our bodies. We go totally into our minds. And that is a way to deal with the traumatic events that we've had. We don't want to feel, and we don't want to have those feelings in our body. So yoga is a moving meditation. It's a great way to get our mind and body put back together. 100%. And meditation is a great way of just going further than ourselves. So where yoga is mind-body connection, meditation is more self and a bigger self, not spiritual self, as opposed to just looking within. So those are really great. And I would recommend anyone who's listening right now, make sure that you're adding that to your routine as well.
Absolutely. And as we wrap up, in terms of tools to get you unstuck fast so you can move past that pain, heal, put your past behind you for good, so you're not dragging that baggage into the next relationship. And again, quick. Okay, so you don't have to hope and pray that more years of therapy is going to allow you to find peace of mind, deep self-love and acceptance, confidence, joy, optimism, passion again, right? The kind of life we say we want to live. Maybe we dreamt up when we were younger. Well, the most powerful tool that I found, you probably see my face turn around, I love this so much, is energy psychology. Now, some of you may have heard of this. There are some tools offered by certain therapists. You might have, found, come across some of these methods in popular spirituality,
Like
but things like
EMDR.
EMDR, right? EFT, tapping, hypnosis can be very powerful. That's not technically in the realm of energy psychology, but there's a very powerful method that we use with our clients called Psych K, where you can access the level of your mind, the subconscious belief systems that are the lenses through which you view yourself and the world, and literally remove any unsupported beliefs, any false negative beliefs that are obscuring recognizing your true greatness, so you can align with your higher self, your purpose, your core essence, your reason for being here, and live a life that feels more natural, more at ease, more in the flow. End chronic stress and anxiety. I mean, we've had clients who struggle with the symptoms of PTSD for years, even seen trauma therapists. One session literally transformed into a state of peace. So eliminating chronic stress and anxiety, ending self-sabotage. Your conscious mind wants to get better. That's probably why you're watching this. But if your subconscious mind is still, playing out those old patterns, well, I don't deserve it, someone could hand you a gold brick and you'll complain how heavy it is, right? And literally as quickly as you edit a Word document, you can access these programs, identify what they are, look at how unsupportive they are, and literally record over them, rewire the neural pathways in your brain in the span of 30 seconds to 2 minutes, maybe 5 minutes on the outside if you want to hug your skeletons one last time as they depart for good. But the difference between this and why it's so powerful, the difference between this and say traditional talk-based therapies, it's not like, oh, I got some new ideas. I understand I should forgive myself, be kinder, let go of my past, watch out for red flags. Maybe this will change. Hope I remember to do that next time. You feel viscerally different. You feel more peaceful. You can literally go into your mind to things that might have been triggering you up until that morning. Have a sense of peaceful non-attachment. It's fabulous. It's a remarkable experience. And after facilitating this for literally hundreds of clients around the world for over 12 years now, I'm convinced it is the fertile ground for miracles. And we're all wired to be able to do this. So it's so fascinating.
And we just got a message this morning from someone that you had, yesterday, that said, I think you and Stephanie have cracked the code when it comes to this level of healing. So I definitely recommend, going over to our website, which is beinglovedshouldn'thurt.com, and you can read up all about some Psych K. You can read out all about that, because I think there's a lot of great information that I'm always blown away at how great it is.
Absolutely.
So
yes, and in wrapping up, hopefully this was helpful. These are things that you can put in place right away and begin to make changes. The question becomes, how effective are you going to be at getting unstuck, and how fast do you want to get to your best life? So again, Stephanie and David coming to you. We're pleased to be here with you. And, if you want to get unstuck and get back quickly onto the road to a better destination, you've got to do something different. That's the big takeaway here. It doesn't have to be a major overhaul. Again, you want to simply start with the next step in front of you, making a decision to do something different, and then taking action on that decision. And really all you have to do is keep repeating it one small step at a time. All right. So
as always, it was great hanging out with all of you. If you need any extra support, you can always
just reach out to us if you're wondering what that next step might be for you. Reach out to us. We'll have a coffee chat and we can help you get started.
So on that note, it was great hanging out with all of you. As always, never forget you are way stronger than you realize. See you next episode, everybody. Bye.
So that's it for today's episode of Toxic Love Podcast. Head on over to iTunes or wherever you subscribe to your shows. One lucky listener every single week who subscribes and posts a review on iTunes will be entered for a chance to win the grand prize VIP drawing with Stephanie McPhail herself. Be sure to head on over to toxiclovepodcast.com and pick up a free copy of Stephanie's gift. And join us next time.